Well, I want to thank everybody for coming out, braving the weather. I do thank C.A.R.E for hosting this event and arranging it, and welcoming all of the candidates for Township Supervisor. All were invited by email, and 3 declined, 1 didn't respond, but we have 3 candidates here that are here to answer your questions. So again, thank you for C.A.R.E for opening this up to all declared candidates who would support open government, fiscal responsibility, safe communities, and things that C.A.R.E stands for. So our format tonight is we will have introductions by each candidate, about 3 minutes, if we can keep it to time. And then I know a number of you are still working on questions, so you need more note cards. Keep filling out those questions. We're going to start with a few in the box, and then if you have them as we go along, just look for this gentleman here in the front with a hat. I have solicited him to help me. This handsome, single, recent Hillsdale graduate, I'm going to mention single, who will be helping me screen the questions, make sure they're legible, and hand them to me. So we'll pose the questions to each candidate. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond, so let's keep it succinct, and we'll get through as many questions as possible. And I guess we'll start with Mr. Fleming. Okay. So introductions. Are we okay from a volume standpoint? I know some of us may be a little under the weather, so do your best to project.
Hi, my name is Jeff Fleming. I've been a resident here for 50 plus years. Actually a life resident, but I moved around because of work and different aspects. I've been in the community aspect with all my sons and my daughter. I was a coach for youth sports, varsity football, varsity Catholic football, about everything else. My profession is basically, I'm a heavy highway project manager. Basically, I'm up at the Pittsburgh International Airport working now. I've been working up there for 3 years trying to get that job done. I go all over for work. Just depends on where we have. I've been married to my wife, Lisa, who's sitting over there for a lot of years, and she's been a great woman. My aspects on the township, I ran for the board probably 10 years, 15 years ago. I was on the board for 8 years. I was chairman of the board for 6 out of the 8. So I ran pretty much what Bev does for a long time. We are very transparent on the board. I'm a very transparent person. I believe in the community to be able to talk and say what's on their mind. But there's a lot of things that people don't understand. And one is if I'm elected, I feel that you elected me to make the best call I can for your satisfaction. And it's a little hard to do with a lot of township residents. People don't understand that. There's a lot of things that's changed in the last 15 years from being on the board then to being on the board now. Buck Fry did retire, resigned, and I took his last year. That's why I'm on the board right now. And it's been an eye-opening experience. I will tell you that the people that are on the board need to be commended, because it's not a fun job up here all the time. That's about it.
Thank you.
It's not fun.
Well, we're gonna come back to that one, so be prepared.
It's not fun, huh? Yeah. Well, I'm Vince Mercuri, and I'm excited about having this opportunity to serve the community. And a lot of times when I have been out talking to voters, knocking on doors, and doing the things out there, meeting people, a lot of folks say to me, like, why are you doing this? And just this past weekend, my wife and I, 45 years, soon to be 46 in the back, my wife, thank you, is here supporting us as well. My brother-in-law, we were away for the weekend. We were up at the cabins, we took a break for the weekend. We were sitting around a fireplace, just talking late at night, and my brother-in-law, who's around my age, looked at me and he said, Vince, with everything that you've accomplished in your career and in your personal life, why would you want to do this at this stage of your life? And I looked at him and I said, Bob, that's exactly why I'm doing it. Because I have the experience of accomplishments and what I can bring to the table. I said, that's why I'm doing it. I'm not just riding off in the sunset here. I want to continue to be involved. My wife and I have lived in the community for over 42 years. We raised all 3 of our kids here, and they have all graduated with honors from Deer Lakes, and they're doing well in their current careers. But from the moment we walked into this community, we've had a lifetime of investment. I have been involved with the West Deer Tech program with Carol McCaskey and Chief Fletcher probably 30-some years ago at the old Geyser home. We were doing food bank and drug and alcohol referral stuff, trying to give people help, because that's my business, and I'll come back to that later. So I was involved from the moment that we moved into the community. I got elected, or I got appointed initially to the school board, and I served for 10 years. I was president for a couple terms, vice president for a couple terms. So I know about community government. When I was on the school board, I was overseeing, we as a board, but as board president, more so, tens of millions of dollars, and 150 to 250 employees probably at the time. So I'm used to large budgets. I'm used to making the hard decisions. I have been involved I was on the EMS board, so I know in my job, I used to be in charge of the mental health crisis line, so I worked very closely with first responders. I've also negotiated contracts with unions. So I bring a very wide, vast experience of fiscal management and leadership leadership in the community, almost 40 years. So that's what I'm bringing to the table, and that's what I'm excited about, and that's what I told my brother-in-law sitting around that campfire. So, thank you.
Mr. Harrison.
Thank you. Well, thanks everyone coming tonight and participating in this forum. As we said earlier, I want to commend the candidates that did show up. We did invite the other candidates. They chose to decline, and basically we were not invited to their forum, so here we are. So a little bit about myself. I'm Dave Harrison. I'm running for supervisor for District 4, which is District 4 and 8. Kind of confusing. That's District 4 is on the south side of 910, District 8's above it. But a little history about myself, if you didn't know. I'm born in England and moved here when I was 15. I became a naturalized U.S. citizen in 1988, and after high school, I got my Bachelor's of Science degree in Civil Mining Engineering from Pitt. We established our roots, my wife and I, of 41 years. I've been living here 35 years. We raised our children here, went through the Deer Lake School District, and we've never left. So I take pride in being West Deer as my home. Our township has safe schools. We have exceptional educators, well-trained police force, a good, efficient EMS and fire departments, and we have an excellent township staff that really stewards the township very well. And I had the privilege to serve as a supervisor. I was appointed just the same way Jeff was. Somebody stepped down, and I originally did try to do that about 4 years ago and found out, I'm in the wrong district, so I had to wait. And when a new opportunity came along, I took advantage of that. I'm a current member of the Planning Commission. I'm actually sitting in my usual seat, so here we are. And I also serve on the executive board of the Deer Lakes Revitalization Corporation that we're trying to bring in new businesses and help develop the township to reduce our tax base. When I was on the board, we proposed a tax reduction, and that least of the taxes that the township can control. We can't control the school taxes. So we also hired and promoted several police officers. We made improvements to Fairford Park. And among other things, I'm a small business owner. My wife and I, we own a small consulting firm focusing on vibration and sound consulting. I've been active in the region on large infrastructure projects such as the UPMC Presby, Carnegie Mellon, University of Pittsburgh, the new airport terminal, the Tree of Life Synagogue, F&B Tower, Corps of Engineer projects, the Turnpike, and PennDOT. I possess a fiscally responsible mindset and maintain a pretty calm disposition. I work well with others, and I'm confident that that, combined with my ethics, will make me an asset to the township. Like I say, I firmly believe that West Deer is kind of the best kept secret in Allegheny County, and I would like to help move that township in the right direction. I hear a lot of grumblings about West Deer's not going in the right direction, and I think that's totally wrong. And my personal feeling is it's a great time to be a West Deer resident, and I would ask you to consider voting for me either by early by mail or on November 4th in person. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to combine a couple of questions. So thank you for those introductory remarks. I think all three of you really hit these first three questions, but I'm going to come back to them, see if there's anything that you would like to add. Two questions are about, why do this? It's not an easy task. So maybe address that, but then also speak to what uniquely qualifies you to help lead our township. We'll start with Mr. Mercuri.
Okay, great. Well, yeah, I touched on that a little bit, that I've had a whole lifetime of investment in this community. And what I bring to the table, what I do for my job before I retired 3 years ago, I basically, throughout my life, have managed drug and alcohol treatment centers and mental health crisis lines. And so for all of those facilities and all of those efforts, I was always managing at least 40 to 50 employees every day, 365 days a year. And so I'm very aware of HR issues. I'm very aware of the legal and ethical issues that go along with managing a company and so forth. So I bring a vast amount of experience, and I've been successful at it. I'm pretty much, again, recognized throughout the state as one of the leading trainers in the drug and alcohol field. I'm a certified addictions counselor. I'm also a licensed professional counselor. So my whole career has been around managing people, mentoring them, and also part of that, which I bring to the table, is also facilities management. I have been in charge. I've worked with engineers. I've worked with blueprints. I've designed buildings. The buildings that's down on 910, it's a drug treatment center, Ridgeview. That was with Pyramid Healthcare. I designed that building. I worked with architects. So I know about infrastructure. I know about blueprint drawings, engineering issues that go along with that. So I bring that to the table too. So it's just not the counseling, it's the management of the counseling that I've done.
Thank you. Ms. Harrison, so again, why and what were your unique qualifications?
Why? Well, my immediate response to that is that at one time I was listening to some podcast about, what's going on with government and all that stuff, and I'm not a politician. And I basically heard that you either got to be like, keep complaining about it, or you can get involved. And that's kind of why I got involved with being, trying to get involved with local politics. And, I have a vast experience dealing with boards. I've been on international boards with explosive engineers and things like that. So I have a lot of technical experience and managerial experience that I can add. Why I'm not here? What I'm not doing is, I don't want to be supervisor, basically, to flip the staff here, to fire the staff, and basically give myself a job. I hear that from my opponent, and that's one reason I'm not here. I don't have any agenda, and I'm here just to help out the township.
Well, thank you. And Mr. Fleming.
All right. Why I'm doing this is because I'm a lifelong resident of West Deer. I've seen so much changes in this community in the last 5-6 years, it's scaring the heck out of me. We've got to go right. Like I said, experience-wise, I've been a CEO, vice president. I've ran 450 people. I've negotiated contracts. I've done union negotiations. I've been in arbitrations. I've done about anything you can imagine. I really feel that Western Township is one of the best places I've ever lived, and I've lived some other places. And we gotta take it by the arm, and we gotta make sure we're going in the right direction.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, along those same lines, we are seeing growth. We're seeing changes in our community, And there are differing views coming into West Deer. So how would each of you make sure you're listening to and hearing those interests, and how would you work with others who share differing points of view? Starting with Mr. Harrison.
Well, that's a good question. I mean, that's why one of the things, being on the planning commission, that's an advisory board. If they don't have the voting rights to change and approve things and stuff, but they can give recommendations to the supervisors to make intelligent decisions. And so that would be, I would listen to the planning commission if I am the supervisor and try to balance our tax base by controlled, balanced growth. I mean, a lot of times we have new developments coming in, and we're trying to do that in a managed way that we don't overstress our road staff and all that type of thing.
Great, thank you. Mr. Fleming.
Trying to think of the proper way to state it. If you come up and you want to talk about housing or anything like that, I'm very open to that, because I want your opinions. I want to know what you think, what's changing. I think West Deer has been underdeveloped for a long time. It really has. It's been protected. I think now they're bringing in some houses. We all see that. It's a lot of different things. The gas has come in. There's a lot of different things on that. I believe that most of the people in West Deer have been there a long time, and the newer people that are coming in like this community, and they like the way it is. And that's, I guess, what I'm trying to say. I want to hear people have questions, but they also got to understand, like I stated in my first statement, there's 5 people on the board. And you guys we have to come up with a united decision on which direction we're going. And that's the hard part. So when you have people coming up and they're voicing their concerns, we have to listen to that, take it in, and sometimes we have to meet executive session, and then we make an opinion of it.
Okay, great. One of the things I've learned over the years is that leadership is 70% planning and communication. You got to be able to communicate with people to get anything done. My schooling, my career has been about listening to people. So I'm going to engage the public. We may not always agree, and I think it's important to be able to disagree without being disagreeable. You know, we may not always make the decisions that everybody likes, but I'm going to listen to what folks have to say. Part of that is my makeup as a counselor and part of my personality. I want to hear what folks say. I don't have all the answers. There's things that I'm an expert at. There's things that I don't know. And we're going to need to listen to the folks, the rank and file in the community. We work for you. We work for the public. You're our bosses on some level, on a lot of levels. And so I want to hear what you have to say. That doesn't mean you're going to always get what you want. I think that's something that's got confused in our self-entitled world that we live in today. You're not always going to get what you want. But I'm at least going to be respectful. You're going to have a caring ear, and I'm going to always be, sensitive to what your view of life is, because not everybody's going to have the view of life that I have. So I want to hear other perspectives. That's going to make me stronger, me better, and this community better if we do that.
That's great, thank you.
Yep.
Just a reminder, if you have questions, the box is right up here. As to this gentleman here in the hat, he'll be happy to come and pick up your question.
That single gentleman.
That's yes.
I'm there.
So now we're going to ask, what would you say is the number one issue that you're concerned about in this election, and what would you deal with first when you're elected? Start with Mr. Fleming.
Number one issue that I'm concerned about is taxes. I want to keep taxes low. I mean, I don't want to raise it at all. Like I said, I live here. I want to look at how we're growing as a township. I mean, we just built this beautiful building, and I think it was well overdue for this building. My last reign was in the other building, which was very, very bad. And Our police department is fantastic. Our fire departments are great and fantastic, and our EMS is too. And I want to make sure everybody's compatible with what we're doing. So when we make decisions, it's going to be very, very difficult to keep our tax base low and make sure we're getting tax economy in. So that's the growth of the township. That'd be the first thing I'd look at.
Yeah, ditto for that. I mean, West Deer Township is at a crossroads. This has been referenced a couple times already. How do we maintain our rural identity? Because we love the rural identity of West Deer Township, but without a productive tax base from new development, we're going to have tax increase. And I'm with Jeff. I've pledged to you, I'm not going to raise taxes if at all possible. But to do that, we got to have development. We've got to have development to do that, but it needs to be reasonable, like Dave had mentioned. And I think that one of the biggest things as a supervisor is to have oversight and accountability with this development, making sure these engineers and these developers are doing what they say they're going to do. The other quick thing I'd like to add real quick here, because obviously the development is an overreaching thing for all of us. Something different that we haven't talked about at all is, and I talked to the chief of police about this, is what's called police social work. We don't have it in West Deer Township, but most of the communities around us do. Now, I'm not saying replace police with social workers. That's nonsense. What I'm talking about is social workers who are trained to provide resources for people who are in crisis. Hampton is the leading township in the area, and it's spreading. And I talked to the chief of police. He's all on board with that. We have to get a grant or something for that. But to make sure that there's resources. They help with domestic violence. They help with due bills that are overdue, physical violence against kids, child abuse. These social workers come in, and they help. They are a support to the police department to help get people the services that they need. And I can come back to that.
Yeah, that's interesting. We'll probably follow up on that. Because
Yeah.
we're going to come back to other priorities. But
Okay.
I'll ask Mr. Anderson, number one priority.
Well, everyone stole my thunder. It is taxes.
Yeah.
And when I was appointed on the board, I was happy to say that we did lower taxes, small amount, at least the taxes that the township can control. And that is probably the number one issue. And we can probably do that with some of we have another over 55 community coming in. I don't know how many 55 communities we can fit into West Deer, but we'll have to balance that. But the good thing about that, it brings in tax base that doesn't strain our township or our school district. So that is probably the number one issue.
Right. Well, like I say, so the follow-up of that is what are other specific policies or initiatives that you will champion for the community? And then what would the impact on the township be for those initiatives? And
I think it's mine, and I was rushing there to talk about the police social working. Because I have served for the last 5 years. I've been on the state representative's mental health and substance abuse task force, and that's where I've worked with. She's been part of this committee, the social worker from the Hampton Police Department. And so one of my priorities would be this whole issue of the opiate epidemic. Again, it's part of my business, but there's money out there from the opioid settlement, from all the pharmaceutical industries. There's money out there that I don't believe the township has gotten, and it's out there in the county so that we could use some of those funds. So first off would be to go after some of that funding so that we could use it in the police department, or maybe use it for this police social work position. The other thing dear to me would be the opiate Narcan boxes. They actually have them in different communities in different high-risk areas. And again, I would consult with EMS, which again, I was on their board years ago, and I've worked with first responders a great deal of my career, where they think those Narcan boxes would be. They cost $200 a piece, and then they would be there so that if it's a high risk for overdosing, there would be Narcan there for folks to do that. And then the other thing would be the whole idea of the police social worker thing. I just think it's a great resource for the police. And again, I talked to the chief. He said he was all for that. Because I said to him, I don't want to mention this in public without your approval. And he said, I'm all for it. And I said, okay, then again, you'd have to figure out the funding. But I think in Hampton, I think they've had it there for about 4 years. And every year that they've done it, the numbers have gone up. There's been like, I think 582 in the last year where they actually helped families navigate the crises that they were dealing with.
Yeah.
Could you
So taxes, obviously.
Okay.
The number one, but other initiatives that you would want to champion in your next term, and what impact you see that having on the township?
Yeah, probably it's got to do with the, first responders, the police force, maintaining that police force. I'm hearing about a lot of times where we're losing some of our police officers to other townships. And when we were on the board, we voted to increase some of the salaries to attract more in there. So we need to maintain that, maintain our EMS staff, and also support our local fire companies.
Excellent. Mr. Fleming.
My background, I was trained with FEMA crisis management. That's something that I think everybody that they're hearing on TV, they're getting pretty nervous about as far as what's happening in the world in different places in the United States. So I think with the police department and basically the fire and the EMS, sort of look into anything we can get to keep us ahead of the game. And I'm talking about, I don't mean weapons or anything like that. I mean structure. Structure being what happens if we get a hurricane tomorrow? What are we going to do? How are we going to bail out of it? And we need funding for that. So is there grants for that? And just like Vince said, the same thing. I mean, we're going to look into the grants. We're going to look into see what we can. But my goal is to protect the community, no matter what. And I don't know if you just look at the news and read the paper, it scares the heck out of you some days.
Before we transition, I'm going to ask one more question around what do you see being the biggest challenges facing our township now? And the question will go first to Mr. Harrison. Biggest challenges?
Biggest challenge?
Yeah.
Well, we mentioned some of the taxes, the roads, the safety of our residents. I mean, probably it's just maintaining a responsible, highly ethical supervisor board, in my opinion.
Anything else to add, Mr. Fleming?
Changes. Well, the biggest thing is
And challenges?
the challenges are growth.
Yeah.
It's always growth. Okay, we want to put 400 houses in. With 400 houses, you're going to have 400 families, 400 families. What's that going to bring? What kind of families are coming in here? What's going to happen? Are we big enough in the school? Where's the school going? What direction are they going? Two different entities. And that's what you got to look at. It's a lot of different things, a lot of case-by-case problems. But that's where I stand with it. I mean, you gotta look at everything that's coming. But as far as to be proactive with West Deer, look at what you're bringing in for housing. Make sure you don't overpopulate. Make sure you watch where you're going and what direction you're going to be in.
I think one of the biggest challenges is maintaining some of the excellence that we have right now. We have the West Deer Township is the 12th lowest millage rate tax-wise out of 130 municipalities in Allegheny County, of all the municipalities, 12. The police department is ranked every year towards the top as one of the best police departments in the state. We have a very healthy fund balance. And being on the school board, I know how important it is to have that healthy fund balance. We have labor peace with all three unions, right? They all have contracts and there's labor peace right now. So to maintain that type of excellence in the crazy changing environment that we have, several of us that are running for supervisor are on the Deer Lakes Revitalization Committee. And development is the key, responsible development is the key to making sure that we have the fund balance and the tax base to be able to do that. So we're looking at what can we do there's three areas we've identified. Downtown Russellton, try to spruce it up a little bit, get some sidewalks, get some lights, make it not be the eyesore that it is, quite frankly. The 910 corridor, try to get some businesses in those empty warehouses that are becoming more empty every passing day. That's terrible. We have these big warehouses and they're empty. And then the third area would be the MSA, the Old Brock Airport, try to recruit some businesses into there to help with that tax base. Because what that'll do is help the fund balance and help all those other areas that I mentioned.
Well, thank you. So here's a question about the makeup of the board. So the question is how would you explain the difference between an advisory board and executive board, and how you will be serving or are currently serving as supervisor? How do you navigate that? So I'm here with Mr. Fleming. So explain the difference between the advisory board, executive board, and your role as supervisor.
Well, an advisory board is where you take opinions and you hash it out amongst yourselves. And you basically get more opinions and you try to come up with a fiscal answer or whatever answer you're looking for. An executive board has to make the hard decisions. They can't really, there's a lot of laws and you have to watch your laws as far as what you do. There's no more than 3 of us can meet at any given time. It's a meeting, you know what I mean? And it's what happens. So that's where you have to really look at what you're doing. If you're on an advisory board, you can make your comments, you can do whatever you want to do, you can say whatever you want to say, because it's an advisory board. But an executive board, you got to watch your P's and Q's. We have a law to follow, and we have to do it.
So a follow-up there, are you serving sometimes as an advisory board? Mr. Harrison mentioned you just some planning commission. When are you serving as advisory versus executive?
Well, like the planning commission would be an advisory board. You know, they would advise us as executives, and that's the way it goes. I mean, it's 2 different sides of the table. A lot of people don't understand that, but it is. It's you can't. I have a lot of opinions I'd like to put out, but I just can't sometimes. You're not capable of doing it.
Yeah, a good active example of that, and I know all 3 of us here support the grant for the dog shelter, that there's some debate going on about that. That's a good example where the sitting executive board of supervisors, they're thinking of the future. What if we need to build? What if we need to do something else? The school's thinking about if they need to expand, so that's why the property where it's at, is so critical. So from an executive standpoint, you have to think of those long-term strategic planning kind of things, where advisory boards can have ideas and so forth that maybe aren't meeting the letter of the law, and that's why the attorney is there. I have heard people say, and I've seen this online, and that's something too. These advisory boards might be able to post things and say things on social media that the executive board cannot do that because of the sunshine laws. And I know about the sunshine law. I did it for the school board. I'm very aware of those categories and criteria today. So the advisory board is going to be can be a little freer. I don't want to say looser because that sounds like they're being negligent, and I don't think that's the intent. But they can be a little freer with what they say, how they say it, and where they say it. But when you're on this executive board, you always have to be making decisions like there's a lawyer sitting on your shoulder. Every HR issue, every fiscal issue, every ordinance issue comes down to some kind of legal mandate. And so you do have to be a little bit cautious of what you say. Maybe guarded is a better word than cautious, because folks are looking. They're looking to jump on that to hurt you, unfortunately. And this isn't really about hurting, in my mind. This is about helping our neighbors.
Yeah.
We want a nice dog shelter. We want a nice community. We're neighbors. We don't need to be hurting each other through false things and things like that. So we need to be accurate, and executive board would need to be more compliant with all those regulatory guidelines.
Last, Mr. Harrison.
Yeah, well, as somebody that honored to actually be in the role of both the supervisor and a planning commission within the last 4 or 5 years, as a member of the planning commission, we act at the direction of the supervisors. And we are allowed to go into depth more than the supervisor will. We go through certain plans and approve them and move them on. And there's there can be more interaction with the public because just the format. We have a public comment at each section, everything we say. And then we relay that information for the supervisors to make intelligent decisions. So it's a 2-phase process. One needs the other.
Yes. And again, solicit if you thought of any additional questions, you might have a pen out there. Feel free to bring them up or ask Mark to come back and grab those from you. So I think I'll hit this one. more on a procedural type basis. Would you support going back to at-large voting or at-large positions for the entire supervisor?
That would be me. I think Jeff went first. That's a home charter issue, and I would need to see more of the demographics. And I think right now, currently, since we changed, there's a lot of confusion. I'm out there talking to voters, making phone calls. People are like, where do I vote? Who's what? What's at large? Who's my, and so there is a lot of confusion. And the board did a lot of advertising about it. There's maps with colors. My wife was working on one today so that people could have it here tonight, but it is confusing for the electorate, and the electorate doesn't tend, or the citizens, more importantly, elected, doesn't tend to pay attention to these things until it's too late. So I would be all for exploring the option of looking into that, because that was a voted thing. The citizens voted for that, and it was close, if I believe, too, right? No, wasn't close. But I would be all for looking into that. What were the pros and cons? What's some of the feedback? Because I think we want to make the citizens part of that.
Yeah.
Like we want to try to make them part of that decision. Like, what do they get from it? What do they need? But I would be all for looking into that for sure. Because I think it's very confusing for people right now.
Yeah, agreed. Harrison?
I would probably be in favor of doing that. I think at its time, it was probably had some reason to do that, which was probably a good reason. But I think the township's changing. And I think that there's a lot of other people out there that might want to run for supervisor, but can't because, like I said, I tried one time and thought, you don't live there. Well, the supervisors represent the whole community. They represent every citizen. Just because I'm from District 4 doesn't mean I don't care about the rest of them. And so maybe I would be open to doing that.
You also add Mr. Fleming?
I thought of a funny story. When I was on the board, when Bev came up and she felt like she was alienated because where she lived, because all the supervisors were over, we'll say, this side of the township. And I think that was probably the first start when they decided to, let's look at something different. Let's try to break it up. And that was after my time when it happened. But the aspect is, I think I would definitely want to go back to the at large. If it's all possible. Again, it was voted in by the community, so whatever the community says, that's what we do.
Let's go back.
Mhm.
Here we're running short on questions. How do you balance the short-term needs of the community with that long-term planning that we talked about, Mr. Harrison?
Well, that probably goes to our the discussion about development and, bringing in more housing, more 55, and balancing that. I mean, one of the attractive things about West Deer is the rural community, the ruralness of it. And so we probably would look to do some balanced growth.
Got it. Fleming?
I look at it a little different. It's the first year we went back to community days in how many years that we didn't have community days?
We tried the fall fest too.
Yeah. Well, this year I thought it went real well. And I think the community sort of enjoyed it and they started coming around again. I think short term, we need to look into that as supervisors. We need to look in what's the community looking for? What do we want to do? We're not talking about money. I mean, we're talking about getting together, doing things together, creating a very good community that's strong and going forward together.
Last one.
Yeah, I was a basketball official for years, PIAA rep basketball official. And it's hard to make the tough calls. When people are yelling at you and people are trying to, want you to call the things their way. And so sometimes the short version, because your question was, how do you balance the short versus the long? It could be an easy out to do something short, but it has these maybe negative implications long term. And so I think there needs to be a strategy to making these decisions. I'm a big proponent, and I've used this my entire years of management, of what's called a SWOT analysis. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And in all of those, we should be thinking about, because an assessment is ongoing. You don't just make a decision today and then forget about it. You should be analyzing that. And again, I think one of our biggest issues here is oversight and accountability. So the decisions we make today, we should be making sure that they're done appropriately, with also not only the short-term issues being addressed, but also looking at how's that going to affect the future. Just like what they're doing with the dog shelter. They're thinking ahead. They're thinking ahead 15, 20 years. What might we need this property for? Right? And so we certainly want to do everything that Barb wants and her staff wants to make sure that they get what they need. But the board would be being negligent in their fiduciary responsibilities if they didn't think about it. What might this mean 15 years down the road? You're obviously not going to want to spend $350,000 and it be a mistake. They want to do this right. So if we use that SWOT analysis and really sort it out, that's why they're bringing in the architects. That's why they've met with Barb several times to talk about things and hear from the community about what they want.
So these last two cards are essentially the same question. Each of you have an opponent who declined to come here tonight. And I want to think about what do you see as the biggest difference between yourself and your opponent, and do you see that opponent bringing any Democrat left-wing ideas and policies into our community? So your opponent, how do you separate yourself from your opponent, and what kind of views do you see your opponent bringing into the community? Where Mr. Fleming.
Again, first.
Time flies when you're having fun. Yeah? You said this wasn't any fun.
This was a question that was written. So.
My opponent has only lived in this township for 2 years, I believe. Again, it's a different community than Hampton, Richland. It's its own entity, West Deer Township is. I've read some things online, and I'm not a gossip guy, and I'm not an online guy, to trust me. I just think the direction that she's going is not the direction that most West Deers don't want to go. So that's all I'm going to say on that.
Understood.
My opponent has given a lot to this community. He was involved with the Planning Commission for a lot of years, so he knows those things very well. I do not think that he would be leaning extremely left on issues. You know, we're 9 months into this campaign since we filed petitions to run, right? So there's been a few of these things. There's been debates. There's been things we write up and questionnaires. And as if this moment, whatever it is, 27, 28 days out from Election Day, I have not said a negative thing about my opponent. And I don't think the question was meant to do that, but I think that, Mark has some experience, different than mine, and mine is different than his. I would bring a lot more to the table, I think, on some levels. But I do not believe he's, a left-leaning radical at any stretch.
Thank you for your response. Mr. Harrison.
Yes, well, my opponent is a well-respected and a highly qualified fire chief. And I respect that, but from my opinion, I think he wears too many hats. I would like him to just do the job that he's supposed to be, that he enjoys doing, being a fire chief, puts on too many hats. I'm not sure. I've heard that he's mentioned something about they want to flip the board so they can fire all the staff and in fact, get himself hired as a manager. I hope that's not true, but that's what someone has told me, and I've heard that be said. So I think that he's better served to be the well-qualified fire chief that he is.
Right. Again, there's still more time for questions. I think we'll go into to closing comments, about 2 minutes. If the candidates would be willing to stay and meet with the folks that are here, appreciate everybody coming out, again, braving the elements, and you'll have some time to meet the candidates one-on-one. So We'll start with Mr. Mercuri with 2 minutes of closing comments.
Well, again, thank you, John, for emceeing this. Thank you for all of you that came out tonight and to C.A.R.E for hosting this. You know, it's an honor and a pleasure to be here. You know, it's an honor to be able to talk to the public about what I can bring to the table, what I've done in this community, and I've done a lot. Currently, I'm also involved with Carol McCaskey's backpack program, working on some funding for her right now to keep that thing afloat. Got a $25,000 grant last year for that, and working on another one this year. I'm also involved with the Poppins Free Store downtown Russellton. I'm the vice president. Work with Sonia very closely on trying to meet the emotional needs of the public. And that's really what we have done as my family, and you know my son is a public servant as well. We have tended to the emotional and the needs of the public. We want to try to meet the needs, but with my job, it's always been like, the food bank, the drug and alcohol, those types of things. So I've always been involved in the emotional infrastructure. Well, now I'm talking about the foundational infrastructure, the roads, the parks, the community, what it needs. My investment is there. So I'm kind of moving from that emotional to the foundational infrastructure. And I believe that my experience, my mode of operation, because I am a good listener, I'm going to treat everybody with dignity and respect, okay? And because, again, like I've said now for the third time tonight, we're all neighbors. Yes, there's going to be disagreements, but we don't need to be disagreeable. We don't need to make it personal. We don't need to be targeting each other. My goodness, that's not good for our kids to see. You know, I heard an ad today that the PIAA put out recently, and it's to us as parents that go to sporting events and adults. And the ad actually says, it's time to grow up, people. Why are you acting this way in public to people? You know, they're saying that there's a referee shortage because of the way the adults are behaving. No, let's be the adults in the room. We may disagree, but let's respect each other. Let's share ideas, because that's how we grow. I'm never going to know what other people know in their profession, and they're not going to know what I know, but we share it, and in that is some strength. So we need to build the community, be respectful, and be open to change and an open dialogue.
Thank you. Mr. Harrison.
Well, probably just starting from where I said in the beginning, my opening statement. I hear all these grumblings of how bad the township is doing, how it's mismanaged, and you know, in my experience of seeing this, look at this building. I mean, this is managed well. I remember when I was on the board about voting about doing this building. I went back through like 12, 15 years of notes, of minutes, about how many times we thought about building this building. Each time, I skipped it for a year, it was 5 million, it was 7 million. It just kept going up and up. And it got to the point where, you know, my son-in-law is a state trooper. And I went into the sergeant's office for the old building. And there they are, 4 guys in a room about 15 by 15, trying to do personal phone calls and highly sensitive calls. I was showing bricks falling out of the building. And I said, okay, well, here's what, if we can keep this under a certain amount, I'll approve that. And I'll vote with the rest of the board. And with getting the $2.5 million worth of grants that we got, some other grants for this being a LEED building, it was time to make that move and make this and build this building. And so for me, we need to keep a stable, well thought out board on this for this township. And I'll be honest with you, if we lose that, I think things, you know, could go in the wrong direction, because we do make decisions on this as a supervisor that could affect the community.
Thank you. Mr. Fleming.
I want to thank you, John. I appreciate everything you did standing up there, and thank everybody for showing up. I appreciate it. I don't have much more to say. My counterparts here pretty much covered everything. I can tell you I have 8 years of grinding out, and that's what I do. I grind it out. I make it happen. I don't want to see West Deer get changed. I've heard the same rumors that everybody's talking about. You know, you don't know what to believe, you don't know what to think. The aspect of the manager in this township, he came on my first year, or he was probably a little, just before my first year. He took the lead and he got his comeuppance because the board back then didn't take anything. They put him through the ringer. He's done a great job. The police chiefs that we've had in this community have done a great job. The fire chiefs we've had in this community have done a great job. That's what we're looking for. We want to keep it about the same. We want to get fiscally responsible. We want to keep the taxes low. We want to keep it safe. We want everything to be that way. I know that's my idea, and that's the way I want to go. Thank you.
And one last point, John, just that all three of us would appreciate your votes. And we appreciate your votes, either absentee ballots or on November 4th. And we'll respect whatever you decide, but we certainly would appreciate your vote and support as we move into this new term.
Well, great. Yeah, appreciate everybody coming out. Please feel free to meet and talk and ask your questions one-on-one if you can.
And we've got thank yous.
And cookies. Cookies out there. Looking forward to.
Thank you all.
Thank you.